The king of the north!
Dracarys.
I will hurt you for this.
I am the sword in the darkness.
Lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep.
Let me give you some advice, bastard.
Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
What is up, everybody? Jeremy Ice and Fire here, and welcome to the channel. George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire has given birth to a great deal of legendary, formidable, and mysterious creatures, one of which that stands above and beyond the rest in terms of popularity, and that is, of course, the fire-breathing dragons, many of which who go on to play a vital part within the Song of Ice and Fire, and some have even become more popular than some characters within the story itself, like, of course, the three famous dragons of Aegon's conquest in Valyrian the Black Dread, Urrax, and Vhagar, and, of course, the many dragons that take part in the Targaryen Civil War known as the Dance of the Dragons, of which House of the Dragon is currently adapting. But in today's video, we are going to be taking a look at some of the more mysterious dragons in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, the dragons of myth and legend that may or may not have existed centuries before the events of A Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, and some of which, according to legend, could still be around in the current story. The dragons of A Song of Ice and Fire are incredibly ferocious and can easily turn the tide of any battle, and with centuries of intriguing history and lore surrounding them, it's quite easy to see why they have become so popular within the story. Yet some of the dragons in the history of A Song of Ice and Fire remain so fantastical and so out of this world that they are still up to debate as to whether or not they ever existed at all. And today we will be diving in and taking a look at some of these dragons of legend. Starting with first, the formidable ice dragons. Ever since ice dragons were first introduced in the story as possibly being real, fans have long awaited the arrival of one of these massive beasts. According to the lore, ice dragons are said to roam the Shivering Sea and the White Waste, and are reportedly much larger than the dragons of Old Valyria, and are said to be made of living ice with eyes of pale blue crystal, with vast translucent wings, and breath cold enough to freeze an entire ship in seconds. The ice dragons are mentioned a few times throughout the source material, most notably with old Nan and the stories she used to tell to the Stark children, with her remarking that the ice dragon's breath is very cold, and with Jon Snow as well, who often thinks about ice dragons in the books. In A Dance with Dragons, Jon compares the gusts of winds at the wall to the cold breath of an ice dragon, and the road beneath the wall also reminds Jon of the dark, cold belly of an ice dragon. The ice pressed close around them, and he could feel the cold seeping into his bones. The weight of the wall above his head, it felt like walking down the gullet of an ice dragon. There has also been many fan theories springing up around the ice dragon as well, one very popular one being that the wall itself was actually built to contain a massive ice dragon imprisoned beneath. Whether or not the ice dragons were real or a figment of myth is still up for debate, but I know many fans are still holding out hope that an ice dragon will appear at some point in the story. But up next we have another dragon of legend and myth, the Dragon of the Red Waste. In Book 2, A Clash of Kings, while Daenerys and her Khalasar are encamped in the abandoned city of Vaes Tolaro, Daenerys sends 3 of her most trusted blood riders to search the surrounding area, in hopes of finding a nearby city or port that can lend them aid, as they are very close to being out of food and water at this point. One of the riders, a Dothraki named Rakaro, travels due south, and during his travels he passes the immense bones of a dragon reported to be so large that he was able to ride his entire horse through the dragon's jaws, which would make this dragon the size of Valyrian the Black Dread or even bigger. Yet very little is known about this dragon and how it perished, and whether or not it was a Valyrian dragon or some other kind of wild dragon. George R. R. Martin has speculated in the past that his world was once filled with dragons, long before the Valyrian Empire rose. Could this dragon of the Red Waste just be a lost remnant of the Empire of Old Valyria, or could it potentially be even older? Up next we have the myth of the great sea dragon, Naga. The tale of Naga states that it was a sea dragon said to have lived thousands of years ago during the Age of Heroes, and was slain by the Grey King, an ancient king of the Iron Islands. According to the Ironborn legend, Naga was the first sea dragon able to feed on krakens and leviathans alike, and was able to drown entire islands when it was angry. That was, of course, until the Grey King, with help by the drowned god, managed to slay her on the shores of the island of Old Wick, where her bones still lie even to this day in the current story. After slaying the sea dragon, it is said that the Grey King used her bones to build his hall. Her jaws became the very throne that he sat upon, and her teeth were fashioned into the very crown that he wore upon his head. It is also stated that the Grey King used her living fire to warm his halls, yet when the Grey King passed, the storm god drowned her fire out, and the sea took the throne. Only her bones that made the pillars and the beams remain. The site would forever be named Naga's Hill, and there 44 giant stone ribs of the sea dragon rise out from the ground like large white trees, and are said to be as wide and tall as a ship's mast. Naga's Hill would go on to become a very important and sacred place to the Ironborn, and is the same location that the Ironborn used to choose their high kings through the King's Moot. During a Feast for Crows, Euron Greyjoy preaches that a King's Moot should be held at Naga's Hill to choose a new king after the passing of Balon Greyjoy, where the King's Moot would go on to choose Euron Greyjoy as their new king. Whether or not the remains actually belong to a giant sea dragon are up for some dispute, as some fans seem to believe that it is just a petrified wood from the hold of an old ship. But one thing's for sure, if these are indeed the bones of a sea dragon, it stands to reason that this is one of the biggest dragons in the history of A Song of Ice and Fire. Up next, we have the legend of the dragon Urrax, and the tale of Serwyn of the Mirror Shield. Urrax was a dragon that is said to have lived long ago during the time of the First Men. According to the legend, Serwyn of the Mirror Shield killed the dragon Urrax by sneaking up on him, hiding behind a shield made of mirror. It is said that Serwyn tracked the dragon down to its lair, where he hid behind his mirror shield until he got close enough to strike, driving a spear directly through the dragon's eye, killing it. A tale that would go on to become very famous in Westerosi history. So famous, in fact, that another would-be dragon slayer would attempt the same method during the Dance of the Dragons, when a knight would attempt to slay the dragon Syrax, only to end up torched for his efforts. The tale of Urrax and Serwyn of the Mirror Shield are one of the more fascinating tales in Westerosi history, as it was thought that there were no dragons in Westeros at that time. Yet other evidence indicates that the world was once heavily populated by dragons centuries or even thousands of years ago, as ancient dragon bones have been found as far north as Ib, and as far south as the jungles of Sithorios, the southernmost continent in the known world. However old and whatever the dragon's true origins are is up for some dispute, yet they remain one of the most interesting and fascinating creatures in all of A Song of Ice and Fire. But that is going to do it for us today on the mythical dragons of A Song of Ice and Fire. And definitely leave your thoughts and comments down below. Do you think these dragons are just the stuff of legend, or could there potentially be some truth to the myths? And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit a like on your way out, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications as well to stay up to date on all of our upcoming content. And as always, I want to give a big thank you to everybody out there for watching, and a huge thank you to all of the channel members, and we will see you on the next one.
The King of the North!
Dracarys.
I will hurt you for this.
I am the sword in the darkness.
Lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep.
Let me give you some advice, bastard.
Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.